Hey, real quick, before we get into that episode, do us a favor and subscribe to our channel. That way you don't miss out on any marketing nuggets. Enjoy the show.
I got a phone call from a gentleman who was super panicked. And he's like, hey, I don't know where to stay. I'm like, cool, come stay here. Anytime you need a place to stay. Occupancy was super low.
Yeah.
And so the important thing is that when there's no occupancy in a hotel, every room makes a difference, right? So this gentleman actually ended up being the director of mental conditioning for the Yankees. My humble little 3-star hotel actually became the home base for the Yankees.
All from picking up the phone.
All from picking up the phone. So I always tell people, you never know who's going to be on the other side.
Hi, I'm Josh Owen. As the owner of a video marketing company in New Orleans, I've been on the quest to learn everything I can about marketing. Everyone has a different style, different strategy, and a different experience. Is there a wrong way to do it? A right way to do it? Let's find out together as we make marketing make sense. Welcome back, everybody, to another fantastic episode of Make Marketing Make Sense. I'm joined today by the one and only illustrious Ashley Dela Cruz, operations manager for various luxury hotel brands. And I'm so excited to talk to you because I'm so curious about really getting to dive in. We see them all the time in the distance. I'm like, what goes on in that hotel, you know? And so you're here to really fill that us in on that experience. So thanks to you for coming in and joining me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here, actually. So the funny part is that I moved from New York about 16 months ago.
Wow.
And I worked for the Four Seasons for the past 15 months. And during that time, I actually never slowed down. So we moved down here.
I'm glad to have a time to sit with you then.
Yeah. So actually, I never get to sit. And half the time, I never go on breaks.
This is a luxury right here.
Yeah. So this is a luxury experience in the sense that, like, usually as an operations manager, you are wearing 15 million different hats.
Yeah.
And you have to do all the jobs. So the second someone calls out, etc., like whether you're luxury or not, like as an operations manager, it is trial by fire every day. And also at the same time, it's just a fun time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, just to dive into that then, like from your experience that you've had so far, you know, what's the big difference from your experience from when it comes to promotion for luxury versus just like your standard hotel?
So luxury versus non-luxury. So I worked and managed both the front desk and the lobby bar at a 3-star hotel in Manhattan. So I worked at the Fairfield in Central Park. Love that property. Miss it a lot, if anything.
Shout out to Fairfield.
Yes, shout out to Fairfield just because. Even though we were a 3-star property, we were instructed to try to provide 5-star service. So for me, I go above and beyond for my guests, and I'm always trying to deliver 5-star service no matter what. So I have a very unique background in the sense that I've worked for the Toronto International Film Festival. I was a quick service bartender at the Air Canada Centre. So I can crank out drinks. And it's funny because I was joking with the in-house group that I was hosting a dinner for. So I recently hosted LG, their whole executive team at the W Hotel. So
the LG. Wow.
So LG
like at the W.
Yeah, so LG at the W. Yeah. It's really cool because as an operations manager, you kind of have to take care of all your guests, right? So for me at the Four Seasons, I made it a point to make sure that point of contacts are huge, right? And so in order to do marketing for hospitality, you're on a stage at all times. So if anything, you have to be stage ready, you have to be present, you have to be charming. And so in a way, I'm always trying to make magic for my guests. And so that's what I was hired to do. So I was furiously interviewing from New York before I moved down here to New Orleans. And one of the hotel managers at the time, Christopher Jordan, so he was really cool in the sense that, like, hey, come join us at the Four Seasons. We have the best people, the best product, the best benefits. And if anything, I was like, cool. He's like, I need someone who can make magic. I'm like, pick me. I'm a magician. Because yes,
I love it.
Not only is it like fun to be theatrical, but at the same time, like you're empowered to do these little magical moments for guests. So for example, the term at the Four Seasons was, I want you to delight the guests. So luxury is actually all about figuring out how you can connect with your guest, personalize the experience, and also hit those Forbes standards that honestly are the bread and butter. So if you hit your steps of service, say, for example, when a customer sits down, you have 1 minute to greet that guest. And then in terms of beverage service, you have 5 minutes to serve that cocktail. And then you have to tell them if you're running late.
Yeah.
Say, for example, the bar slammed.
Yeah.
And if it takes more than 5 minutes, you're supposed to notify the guest that it may take 8 to 10 minutes. And then at that point, like, you basically have to tell them, like, hey, this is what's happening.
Yeah.
So in terms of Forbes standards, I've been recognized by Forbes personally, which is great. So
Okay.
shout out every time there is a secret shop, for example. I always tell my staff, hey, you never know who is on the other side, right?
Yeah.
So secret shops are basically,
That's
you
a
know,
real, like, they really still do that.
yeah,
Wow.
no, it is. So it's called an audit, right? And so luxury audits, they're both internal and external. So usually for the Four Seasons, it was supposed to be done monthly for standards testing. So every person should know like what they're supposed to do.
Yeah.
However, does the talent actually do it? It's a little bit harder. So in terms of to provide the luxury experience, you also have to think about who's providing it. And so you also have to take care of the hourly staff. So my struggle as an operations manager is really when you're in a rock and a hard place. So for me, I am also that counselor.
Yeah.
So I try to advocate for my staff as best as possible. So in terms of when I first arrived in New Orleans, if anything, the staff were just like really traumatized. They had gone through several different managers at this point, and so I was joining a team of pirates that are awesome. So there are these badass bartenders at Chandelier Bar. So shout out to Chandelier Bar.
Hey.
I miss my staff, and I loved working with them because
Yeah.
they're so talented.
Yeah.
And the best part is that they're like the OG seasoned bartenders that were brought on to open this beautiful luxury hotel. So they too were sold on a dream.
Yeah.
And, you know,
Yeah.
we're all just trying
All
to
you
make
dreamers in one spot
We're
together.
all dreaming.
Yeah.
So, yeah, if anything, luxury is really trying to sell
Yeah.
that like dream, that like magic, that
Yeah.
mystique. So the Ritz-Carlton is actually about creating a mystique of like kind of creating this allure, kind of like this cool sort of like mystery. And then the Four Seasons is all about magic. And so making magic happen. So, for example, service recovery. When it comes to if a guest has an issue on the housekeeping side, I was expected to literally see on the VIP chat who had an issue, and you were empowered to resolve the issue. So imagine they didn't do your turn down service, and then they were super upset and wanted like the moon and stars.
Yeah.
But so if I found out that they had an issue, I would send an extra dessert to the table. And then by the time they got back to the room, turn down service would be done. So that's the kind of expectation.
Yeah.
So Chastity, our PNC person, or I think the person that did the onboarding. So training and all that stuff, super important.
Yeah.
So orientation, also really important. So I think it's really good to kind of outline what the
Yeah.
expectations are for
Yeah.
staff. That way they know. But at the same time, something that stuck with me about luxury is that luxury is when you don't have to think about anything. So I was told that luxury stops when the guest has to think. So in terms of you as like a provider of a service or a creator of an experience, for example, when I see my guests, I love finding out where they're from.
Yeah.
So the beautiful part of New Orleans is that everyone's here to have fun.
Yeah.
So the entire point is like, cool, what are you here to do?
Yeah.
What do you want to see? And so I love meeting newcomers, first timers to New Orleans, because I remember when I first got here, I had no idea where to go. And so really you become that personalized concierge for these people. So for me, my favorite part of my job is actually connecting people with amazing food and beverage experiences. So I will try to find out what you're celebrating, what you're allergic to, and what you want to do. And so I literally make these handwritten lists of
Wow.
touristing homework,
Yeah.
and I send them out into the world to vicariously live through them because I'm just at work all the time.
Yeah.
So
yeah. But you get the feedback and you kind of adjust it and see where it goes. Yeah.
So for me, I was a counselor before I went back into hospitality. So My first degree was in psychology and English. And so I attended the University of Toronto.
Yeah.
And then I love connecting with international guests because I also went to Oxford University. So I studied Shakespeare.
Oh, wow.
I did
okay,
weekends in
okay.
London, and it was really cool because
Man.
London's a really great city as
Yeah.
well. And
Well,
so,
I'm sorry we don't have enough Shakespeare around here. You know?
oh, I know. Well, it's so hard because honestly, poetry is just something that's out of place now. And unfortunately, it's sad because, you know,
Yeah.
it's just, what is this? Print material?
But you put that poetry back in your work, I feel like.
Yeah.
So, you know.
So, I do love incorporating elements of like poetry and lyrical
Yeah,
things. And so,
interesting.
for social media content creation, for
Yeah.
example, right? I love placing a perfectly like ironic song or like the best song possible for content.
Yeah.
So, what I loved, I was actually in charge of creating the entire bar program for my property in Manhattan.
Wow.
So
Okay.
I basically rebuilt the bar from scratch after 2 years of it being closed. So I
Wow.
exhumed the bar.
Yes.
And the sentient life after 2 years of closed COVID stuff, I will say that it was terrifying, and I'm not going to traumatize you with what I saw after 2 years. But yeah, I basically designed the entire bar program
Yeah.
from scratch, from inventory to menu designing to drinks, all that stuff. So for me, it was so much fun because I got to be paid to do what I love. So in terms of, again, if you love what you do, you put your heart into it, and I do. And so when I joined the W Hotel after leaving the Four Seasons, I designed the entire festive drink menu. I was having so much fun because I got to be a mixologist again. And so I designed all these really cool drinks. So I brought my top selling cocktail from Manhattan to New Orleans. So just in case anyone wants, you can stop by the W Hotel and get a smoked cinnamon maple old fashioned because I'm also Canadian.
Hey.
So, yeah.
I love that. Yeah. And I guess, you know, all of this too, you know, wrapping it back into that marketing lens too, how does good operations really reflect on the marketing? You know, how do they go in tandem with each other?
So I will say that a lot of what the Four Seasons is a bit of magic in the smoke and mirror sense. So it's like the Wizard of Oz.
Oh.
So if you pull back the curtain,
yeah,
it gets a little dicey when you see the old man behind it. But in terms of operations, if it's a well-oiled machine, like say for example, you have to set up the shift for success.
Yeah.
And so that echoes throughout so many different levels, especially in operations. So for example, I had to facilitate the temp labor in multiple languages. So Chandelier Bar, for example, it sees on any given day between 200 to 800 people.
Wow.
And so me as an operations manager, I manage the Chandelier Bar and the fine dining restaurant Miss River at the same time. So Chef Alon Shaya, I'm really sad I don't get to work with him anymore because he's actually the nicest James Beard Award-winning chef.
Really?
And so me being in New York, actually, I've crossed paths with some James Beard Award-winning chefs. They're not very nice.
Oh, no.
But Chef Alon Shaya is the biggest sweetheart. So I had the warmest reception.
Yeah, that's
when
awesome.
I came to the Four Seasons. And basically, chef partners, it's hard because you have to find a happy medium between the partnership between chef partners and also the hotel. So, for example, the Four Seasons has two different restaurants. There's Chemin a la Mer on the 5th floor, which is Donald Link's French Steakhouse. And then Miss River is actually Chef Alon Shaya's love letter to New Orleans. And so a lot of really great flavors, good portions. So I've literally said that spiel 1,000 times.
Yeah.
So in terms of polishing a product, right? Like once you have like your spiels down, like if you are able to kind of tailor and make your pitch, and so it's really easy to suggestively sell things to your guests, etc. So I try my best to empower my servers, my bartenders. Hey, get to know your guests.
Yeah.
And so if they are set up for success, then they don't have to think about anything other than cultivating that relationship with the guests. So hospitality is all about creating the experience. So it's something that also can't be taught. So not everyone has that same kind of like, you know, for me, I'm Filipino, so I naturally host people.
Yeah.
And so for me, food is love. So I'm going to
Right.
bury you in food until you can't breathe. And then same
Oh
thing with
God.
drinks, right? So
Yeah.
it's just going to be like one more drink. Here's a shot. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
well, within reason.
Yeah.
Just because. Also, as an operations manager, you're like the party planner
Yeah.
in the sense that, like, you're the host of the party. You have to make sure everyone has a great time.
Mm.
But then if someone gets too drunk, you're also the bad guy. And
Mm.
so, unfortunately, alcohol service, especially here in New Orleans,
Mhm.
is very hard because, the to-go cup culture, I know exactly when to cut someone off. If they're walking around with 10 to-go cups as badges of honor, I'm like, that person's getting food. So I'm like, great.
Yeah.
They're like, hey, can I get a menu? Perfect.
Yeah.
Here's a food menu.
Yeah.
So, like, you kind of have to anticipate. So,
Yeah.
luxury is all about anticipating
Anticipating,
service, right?
Yeah. And I
So-
guess, well, I'm curious too, when you're anticipating, and obviously you're trying to do that every time, and every hotel's trying to keep up with that. How have you noticed, especially in New Orleans, the market, how do you start standing ahead of the pack, from the other luxury hotels? How do you start differentiating yourself and really pushing
Yeah.
yourself in
So the funny
boundary?
thing is that different guests have different expectations, right?
Mm.
So for me, when you're talking about a Marriott property versus a Four Seasons property
Mhm.
versus a Hilton property, no offense against Hilton, but I'm a Marriott girl through and through. I've been staying in
Dang.
Marriott's my whole life.
Hot
Shots
takes.
fired.
Yeah, shots fired.
No, I'm nothing. Okay, everyone who works for the Hilton, good job. But at the same time, not gonna lie, I love the Marriott
Yeah.
because whatever isn't a Hilton, a Hyatt, independent is a Marriott,
Mm.
essentially.
Wow.
And so Marriott has the largest portfolio.
Mm.
Shout out to Marriott.
Yeah.
I'm hoping to eventually retire with them because what they have at the Marriott is something called the Century Club.
Mm-hmm.
If you invest 25 years with them, your hotel stays are free for the rest of your
Wow.
life. So Marriott's a really great company, just because they have the largest hotel
Yeah.
portfolio.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so each one, for luxury, for example, there's a difference between classic and distinctive.
Mm.
So the W falls under the distinctive luxury brand.
Okay.
And so with the W, it was actually founded out of New York City. So it's really cool. So working for the W,
Uh-huh.
I know exactly what that brand entails.
Gotcha.
So the W Hotel Times Square, there's this place called Toshi's Living Room. It's literally like a club when you check in.
Okay.
And
wow.
I brought my parents there, and they absolutely hated it. And so,
yeah, it's not a parent's place. I don't think.
well, the funny part is that my mom's super young. There's only a
Mm.
20-year difference between
Gotcha.
us. So the funny thing is that we look like sisters.
Mm.
So I always delight my guests, especially when it's a mother-daughter. And I'm like, oh my God, are you sisters? And they're like, oh, because, they
Yeah,
love it, right? And so it's really fun,
Yeah.
like getting to know the guests. But in terms of differentiating the different luxury brands, the Ritz-Carlton is up there. There's also the JW. So that falls on the classic side for Marriott. And then Bulgari and a couple other hotel chains are actually under the distinctive luxury brand. But the Four Seasons, all on its own. People get it confused all the time. They're like, oh, is it part of Marriott? The answer is no. I wish it was.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
at the same time, the Four Seasons is a Canadian company.
Huh.
So for me, I thought it was like going home. And the
Oh.
coolest part is that during my 15 months at the Four Seasons, I got to experience so much cool stuff.
Wow.
And so despite a lot of the trauma that actually occurred during the 15 months, there was actually a lot of really good nuggets of experience.
yeah, that's awesome.
And so I was making some people laugh.
yeah.
And I'm like, look, as an operations manager, it is trial by fire every day. But I'm forged in the fire, and at this point, I'm a hospitality diamond because no matter what, it didn't break me.
yeah.
So,
That's
and that's
awesome.
the attitude you have to
Yeah.
have, because sometimes you're gonna get those guests
Yeah.
that you want to punch in the face and you can't. And so, and also you're gonna get those guests that are
Yeah.
creepy.
Yeah.
And so,
Mm.
for me, I'm a counselor through and through. So with my backgrounds, I did hospitality management. My degree was actually at the Institute of Culinary Education.
Oh, okay.
It was
Cooking
awesome.
too. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Alright.
I got to eat and live my best life.
Yeah.
So I worked 7 days a week. And then I also went to school full time in the evening.
Huh.
But the best part is at the Institute of Culinary Education, you sign a press release
Huh.
because you're going to be on TV.
Yeah.
The Food Network films there. And also, the best part is you get to eat your best life
Yeah.
because all the culinary kids
Yeah.
put out stuff. So
Yeah.
the best part about hospitality is really the food and drinks.
Yeah.
And the cool part is that For me as an operations manager, it's like I'm a food and beverage counselor. So
Mm.
the only difference between hospitality and psychology is that in hospitality, there are no treatment plans, but we prescribe alcohol and food.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
basically, you still work with crazy people
Yeah.
regardless.
Yeah.
So
That's wild. Well, we got enough time for one last thing. And I
Mhm.
guess what I would like to wrap it up with is if you could give, and this could be not even just for hotel, but like from your perspective in ops, like what would you say are the most important ingredients to successful operation, an operation and team that can really execute the plan correctly, whether it's
Mhm.
luxury or a hotel or just all of us entrepreneurs looking to
Yeah.
learn. What would you
So
say the ingredients are?
really good communication.
Mm.
So
And what do you mean by
important.
that?
Well, if you have bad communication, then your whole operation is just gonna be fucked up.
Mm.
Of like, not
Yeah.
gonna lie.
Yeah.
So if, say for example, timely communication,
Yeah.
right? So, example, New Year's Eve, right? So I had a situation where me as a manager, I had to give the team an uncomfortable direction,
Mm.
and so I was told the morning of that instead of 1 o'clock closing at New Year's Eve,
Mm-hmm.
that we'd be closing at 2. But that's unfair to my staff. And so the fact that I had to relay that order, super uncomfortable. So
Mm.
unfortunately, as a manager, you get the kind of like information from above, and then you have to give out the marching orders to the troops.
Mm-hmm.
And then you are in the trenches with these troops. So
Mm.
to motivate them, the messages and the communication that you give them are super important. So
Mm.
literally, don't shoot the messenger when I'm trying to tell you something, but it sucks when the message you have to relay is a shitty one,
Mm-hmm.
right? So good communication. So positive feedback. So job performance, positive feedback is important because if you only focus on the negative, that staff member is just going to hate you.
Mm.
And so I think communication is huge because also when I'm training my hostesses, for example, you have to pick up the phone within 3 rings. Not
Mm.
only is it a standard, but at the same time, for every phone call you don't pick up is basically a guest that you miss.
Mm.
So, cool part is during the pandemic, when I was working at the Fairfield,
Mm-hmm.
heart of the pandemic, I got a phone call from a gentleman who was super panicked.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, hey, I don't know where to stay. I'm like, cool, come stay here. Anytime you need a place
Yeah.
to stay, occupancy was super low.
Yeah.
And so the important thing is that when there's no occupancy in a hotel, every room makes a difference, right?
Mm.
So this gentleman actually ended up being the director of mental conditioning for the Yankees.
Wow.
And
Oh
so
my gosh.
my humble little 3-star hotel actually became the home base for the Yankees.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
the
No,
coolest
that all
thing-
from picking up the phone.
all
Yeah.
from picking up the phone. So I always tell people, you never know who's going to be on the other side, because during the season where Aaron Judge broke the home run record,
Mm-hmm.
the coolest part is that I ended up attending one of the games because I actually found the director of infield's lucky blazer before banquet. And as a joke, he
Wow.
goes, what can I do for you? I'm like, tickets, just kidding. He's like, cool, pick a date. And I'm like, oh my God.
And next thing you knew.
And
Yeah.
so again, communication is key,
Yeah.
right? And so even whatever you communicate to your guests and your staff, super huge. So key ingredient in terms of a successful operation is communication.
That's awesome. I love it. Wow. Well, I think that's super fantastic, and I'm sure there are already hotels out there that are ready to poach you and talk and get you right in that door. So if you want, you can tell everybody like where to find you online and what you're doing.
Yeah, so currently I am the operations manager at the W Hotel. We have an amazing festive menu, so I designed all the drinks myself. We have a smoked cinnamon maple old fashioned, which is phenomenal. We have a cranberry bliss spritz, which is actually one of my favorite drinks because it takes 1 minute to make. You freeze the Aperol, the cranberry, and the garnishes, and you just top it with Prosecco. So, those boozy popsicles. Like, it's a really good trend.
You gotta love them.
Yeah, in New York, they charge like $30 a pop at the Loopy Droopy bar. So, again.
Dang.
it's
I don't live in
actually-
New York.
Yeah. So, I actually love how cheap the food and drinks
Yeah,
here
yeah.
are. So, when I moved to New Orleans, I was about 15 pounds lighter. So, the South is loving on me. So, I
Yeah.
am a curvy queen.
Yeah.
But, so there's a lot of really cool cocktails at the W Hotel. It will be the W French Quarter up until January 6th. And then after that point, hopefully I would be working for the Ritz-Carlton as their operations manager, fingers crossed. But at the end of the day, I'm excited to kind of see how the Ritz-Carlton brings luxury to life. So I have my first shadowing shift there. But when I'm not being an operations manager, I'm also a boozy baker. So I love mixing alcohol and baked goods together. So also you can find me on Instagram, Sweet Synchronicities, just because I'm bringing shot berries, Kahlua brownies, boozy baked goods, all that stuff. So if you are looking for some boozy baked goods, please follow me on Instagram at Sweet Synchronicities. So.
I love it. Awesome. All right. Well, you heard it here first, folks. Thanks again, Ashley, for joining us.
Yeah,
and
it's a pleasure.
We'll see you all on the next one.
Woo.
Thanks for tuning into the show. If you haven't already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. This episode of Make Marketing Make Sense is brought to you by Comfystone. If your business needs organic social media video content, video ads, or video podcasting, hit up Comfystone at comfystone.com and follow Comfystone on Instagram and TikTok. Until next time, this is Make Marketing Make Sense.